I'm Pat Whalen, the Chief Operating Officer of the Medical Campus and Buffalo-Niagara Medical Campus, sometimes referred to as the corridor. We don't like that because there was an effort about 15 or 18 years ago to establish a medical corridor in Buffalo, sometimes called the High Street Corridor, sometimes called the Buffalo Medical Corridor, and it failed. So we don't like to talk about the medical corridor. About 6 years ago, Mayor Masiello asked Tom Beecher, who at the time was the chairman of Kaleida, to re-energize that effort. And Tom said, no, thanks, that's been done, we don't want to do that again. And the mayor was insistent. And Tom, one of the things Tom did was he went and interviewed the people that were involved in the failed effort from about 15 years earlier and asked them what worked and what didn't work, and obviously didn't want to make the same mistakes again. So, but what is the Buffalo-Niagara Medical Campus? A lot of people, I've been with the campus for a little over a year now, and a lot of people don't know what it is. It's three things, in my opinion. It's a concept. The concept being that with these major medical institutions right across the street from each other for 110 years, Buffalo General Hospital and Roswell Park were both formed in the 1890s. They were across the street from each other for all that time, and the only time they ever talked to each other was in court. When they dispute over land or nurses or something, and they'd sue each other, and that's the only time they really discussed anything. So the mayor's vision was, let's get these people to collaborate. The University of Buffalo came in. I know you're going to hear from Marcia Henderson later about UB 2020, so I won't go too much into that. But Tom really went then and visited other medical campuses and found out what works and what doesn't work. And one of the things he found out that was very important to engage your neighbors. In places like Cleveland and Baltimore, they found out that Johns Hopkins has lots of problems with their neighbors. Their neighbors actually try to block things, kind of like the Peace Bridge here. So one of the things Tom insisted on when the board was put together was that a representative of the Fruit Belt be on the board and a representative of the Allentown Association be on the board, or the Allentown neighborhood be on the board. So the board's made up of the county executive, the mayor, representatives of Fruit Belt and Allentown, but also the top two people at each of the 10 institutions that make up the medical campus. And I have them written down because I forget them all the time, but obviously Roswell, Kaleida, UB, Hauptmann Woodward Institute, Buffalo Hearing and Speech, the Ross Eye Institute, Hospice, Upstate New York Transplant Services. I think that's 10. But the top two people, so most of those institutions have a volunteer board chair, a guy like Ted Walsh, who's the board chair for Kaleida. He does that as a volunteer to this community. So Ted is on our board as the representative of Kaleida because he's the Kaleida chair. Jim Caskey is the Kaleida CEO, so he's on our board. So it's the top two people in each of those institutions. And those are the people that are really driving what's happening on the Buffalo-Niagara Medical Campus. This vision that by collaborating, they can get more done than they can get done individually. So one of the pictures here is a picture of the Life Sciences Complex, and that's a complex that really this year has started to produce what I think was intended and envisioned all along, and that is that these three of the institutions came together and collaborated. It was Roswell, the University of Buffalo, and Hauptmann Woodward Institute. They went together to get funding to build these three buildings. The one on the left is Hauptmann Woodward, the one in the center is the University of Buffalo building, Center of Excellence, and the one on the right is a Roswell building. All three of those buildings are research buildings. It's about 400,000 square feet, I believe, is the number. 400,000 square feet of research space. Those buildings are full now. UB finished off the top 2 floors of the building on the right this year, and it's fully occupied now. The Center of Excellence is fully occupied, and Hauptmann Woodward is obviously, they have a world-class operation going on in that building. What's happened in the last year is the research that's being done at those 3 institutions has started to spin off startup companies. There's, in the building, I'm in the middle building right there, it's called the Center of Excellence. There's 17 startup businesses in that building alone. So one of the questions I think Mark asked was, what's the greatest accomplishment in the past year? The greatest accomplishment for the medical campus, I think, has been the success of those 3, the research that goes on at those 3 buildings. For the next year, what we see is a real positive thing for us is the development of across the street from those buildings and down the block a little bit, we've taken a big chunk of the former Trico building and we're developing a center called the Innovation Center. The Innovation Center is designed to house those startup companies, because what's happened now is the startup companies have started in the buildings, and as they grow and add people, which is what we all want, they are occupying space that could be occupied by more researchers to do more startups, and we've kind of got a logjam. So we've taken the old Trico complex, we're spending about $11 million on the Trico building right now, and renovating that into a building called the Innovation Center, where we will house those startup companies so they can leave these three facilities, move down the street, stay on the medical campus, still be connected to all the assets that the medical campus has to offer, the clinical work that they need to access to, some of the equipment that's in these buildings they'll still have access to, but they'll be able to grow, and these buildings will be able to be repopulated with new research scientists that we can get the treadmill effect going, or the conveyor belt effect going, so we can generate more of these startup companies. So the vision that we have at the medical campus for the future really is about these 10 institutions, but it's also what really I think we need to do is start developing more startup companies and having those companies hire and employ young people in Buffalo, so we can get Buffalo back on its feet, use some of the surrounding neighborhoods, as we heard a couple times, and buy Clint Brown's condos. Are those condos or apartments? Lofts. Lofts for lease or rent? For rent. Okay. Thank you very much.